Raquel, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Hi, Lupe. Thank you for having me.
So, I like to start every interview by asking guests, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I actually wanted to be a florist, so
Ah,
not too far off from what I'm doing now. I was a dreamer. I had goals. I think that was my dad's way of making sure I didn't get into trouble or I didn't run off and get married really early. He always said, "What's your 1 year goal? What's your 5 year goal? What's your 10 year goal?" So even as a young child, I definitely saw my life as a timeline. And I thought about things I wanted to do while I was young. And I thought about things I wanted to do when I was older and even when I retired. So I had this great big vision that I wanted to be a botanist. I loved science in school. It was my favorite subject. And biology was really kind of my heart and passion. And then I fell in love with plants. And I asked my mom, I said, "When did you notice that I took this love for plants?" And she said, "Oh, always. Even as a young girl, you were always going and picking the little flowers, the little weeds from the ground and making bouquets. Even in first grade, I remember the kids are playing and running on the playground. I was actually going and making small little bouquets of the flowers, just the weed flowers for my teachers. And I would come back with these miniature sized bouquets for them. So I think my love for plants started really early. My mom was a gardener. She loved to read. So we would read Shakespeare in the garden. And it was just very romantic, cool, all of these great things that as a kid, even you have an imagination and you love to just sit in a garden and play. So that's kind of where my life began. I went to school, studied botany. I loved all my biology classes in high school. And then I actually took a floral design class my senior year of high school. And that's when I really fell in love with designing and actually putting flowers together. I would save all of my money, my chore money, my allowance, and I would actually buy myself fresh flowers. So as a high school student, I had fresh flowers in my room. Well, my mom was a gardener, so really she always liked me to go pick flowers and make an arrangement for the table for dinner. And so I just always had this love of flowers really, really early. And I always kind of thought of myself as when you're left brain or your right brain, I always found myself right in the middle. But I loved art and I loved the beauty of flowers. So it's funny because I finally figured out a way to blend those two together. But as a child, loved flowers, loved plants. In college, I took that floral design class and I really started thinking, oh my gosh, can I do this as a career? And so my parents told me really early on I needed to go to college and get a college degree. And so they said, okay, if you want to be a florist, then research it. I want you to see what kind of college you're going to go to. I want you to see how much you're going to make hourly. What are all of these things? Because my parents were very goal oriented too. They wanted me to not just have this dream, but also think about, can you accomplish it? Can you make it a
mm,
reality? And that really quickly was squashed because I was like, okay, you don't make very much money being a florist. I graduated high school in 2005. I think the average annual salary was like $25,000 for a florist. And
mm.
my parents were like, well, how does that look? How are you going to raise a family on that? So I actually went to college and started studying botany. So I decided, okay, well, I'll be a botanist. I'll change the world. I loved my favorite botanist was Gregor Mendel. And he was one of the first ones that took pea plants and he cross pollinated to make different color flowers. So I
Oh,
said, oh
wow.
my gosh, that's amazing. I'll go work with all of these flower growers and I'll create new varieties of flowers. And that way I could combine my love of flowers and science together. So this was my dream, Lipe. And then in my mind, I thought, oh, and then I can retire with a flower shop. So that was kind of my vision as a child. I would say probably middle school, high school, college. I'm still kind of thinking this about myself. Went to college, went to University of Texas, studied plants, studied biology, studied botany, and kind of started losing that dream of being a florist because I was really into the
Mm,
research. I had
mm.
all of these great professors who were doing life-changing work at University of Texas as botanists. They were studying trees, cellulose, and all the amazing things that I just loved. I would just be a bookworm. I'd go sit in the library for hours and just open these old botany books. Explorers and botanists, they would actually draw the flowers. I mean, from like the 1800s. I would
Wow.
just get lost in the library. I loved it. And I kind of lost that vision of being a florist. It just kind of
Mm.
got put on the burner. But I had a friend, she got married right around my senior year, and everybody knew I was the flower girl. I always had fresh flowers in my apartment. I was always just trying to design things for fun. And flowers can be very therapeutic. So when you're going through hard times in college, when you're having a breakup or you're having midterms, and it was just a really good way for me to decompress and relax. So I kind of got known as the flower girl. And I had a friend say, "Hey, do you want to do my wedding flowers?" And I said, "Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh,
God.
okay." I didn't think about that. I haven't taken any kind of design since high school. And I went on a limb and I said, "Yes, let's do it." And it was very minimal. She just needed a few bouquets and a couple boutonnieres, nothing crazy for the tables or anything, which was great because that was way beyond my skill level at that time. And I was still a senior. So I drove up to Dallas. My parents were in Dallas still. I drove up and did her wedding and I loved it. And it
Mm.
really just kind of ignited that flame for floral again. And long story long, I ended up here I am. I'm a wedding florist and a floral teacher. And so it's kind of funny because I actually did become a science teacher after I graduated college. I didn't really have enough business to start my own floral company. And again, my parents were very goal oriented. I was always independent. I'm the oldest of my siblings. And
Mm.
so I always wanted to provide for myself. If I asked for help, it was because I was desperately in need of it, and I always worked multiple jobs through college. And I was a substitute teacher at University of Texas in Austin. So while I was in school, I was working to finish. I was a substitute teacher and I just kind of fell in love when I was a tutor and I love to tutor small children. So I said, you know what? While I'm working towards this great big plan of being a professor and a researcher, I can teach science. I think that would be really fun. And so when I graduated, I don't know if you remember, that was during that whole 2008. Remember, there was a big recession
Mm-hmm.
and people
Mm-hmm.
weren't hiring, people were firing, and ended up graduating in 2010, the end of that year. And it was hard. It was hard to find a job. And even as a substitute teacher, I applied to every school district in the Metroplex, and a lot of the schools said, we're not hiring full-time positions. We're just going
Mm.
to hire you as a substitute. And if a position comes by, we'll let you guys know. But it was really slim pickings at that time. So I was a substitute teacher and still doing flowers. Anybody that had a baby shower or a wedding, I would just throw myself out there and I would just, on a limb, I went out there and said, "Hey, I'll do your flowers."
Mm.
And I often did them for just the cost of the flowers because I didn't know how to charge at that time. I was really just doing it to learn and to see
Mm.
if that was something I really liked to do. And at the time, I think my mom heard on the radio, I think I'd just been graduated for maybe about 6 months. And she said, "Oh my gosh, DISD is looking for teachers." I said, "Now?" It was August 1st. I think school started in a few weeks. She said, "Yes, so many teachers took this package. They offered a retirement package, and so many
Mm.
teachers took it." So then there was a deficit of teachers.
Wow.
And they started school with full-time subs because they didn't have enough teachers. And
Wow.
so here I was, I went around to all of these schools, took my resume, got a suit, first time out of college looking for a job, and was so excited. I got hired at a Montessori school, but my certification wasn't going to be what I was teaching. So they said, "We'll put you in, we'll have a full-time sub in this class. And as soon as you get certified, we'll put you in." So that was August. And I started teaching November 1st. It was so stressful. I studied because I knew that there was a whole school, there was teachers, there was a principal, there was students who were really relying on me to pass
Mm.
that test so that they
Mm.
would have a full-time teacher. So I did. I became a Montessori teacher at a wonderful school in Dallas. I know that you were a magnet school kid. I was lucky enough to be a magnet school teacher in DISD. They have some
Mm.
amazing programs and some amazing students are doing wonderful things. My kids now that I taught are graduating college, and
Oh
it's so
my
crazy to
God.
think about because they were little bitty kids back then. It was third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, all subjects, which is not really what my studies were. It was science, but we had chickens. We had a garden. I got to teach my kids about botany. I loved it. I also had to teach math and English and social studies, but I love school. I always think knowledge is power. As silly
Mm.
as that sounds, it truly is. So that was really fun to be able to enjoy these children who were learning. I do feel like the magnet kids are a little bit different. They loved learning. They
Mm.
really
Mm.
wanted to fill their brain with as much knowledge as possible. And I got to teach there for 3 years. The science teacher ended up leaving, so I took her position. So I was full-time science teacher, and that was so fun, just doing all of the lessons with the kids. And like I said, I got to teach botany to elementary
Mm.
students. So I was kind of living out this passion I always had, but I still was doing weddings.
On
My
the
friends were
side.
getting married. I was 23, so 23, 24, 25 is kind of that everybody's graduating college and getting married. So I was teaching during the school year, and then on the weekends, I was doing weddings. It was
Mm.
crazy. I don't remember if I ever had a day off or if I
Wow.
slept. But when you're young, you don't really need as much sleep as you
We
do
have
when
a
you're
lot more
older.
energy when
So,
we're young.
oh my gosh, I think about it now and I was like, how do I even have the energy to do that? But I was so passionate about both things. I loved my students, I loved teaching, and I loved my brides. I loved weddings. I loved flowers. I loved getting to create something so beautiful. So, again, going back to that two sides of my brain, I felt like they both were fulfilled: science and teaching, and then floral, creating beautiful things. So, I kind of feel like what I had planned for my life is kind of happened. There's been some obstacles in there, just as every journey has, but it's been fun to kind of think back. And my kids are young, 3 and 7. So they're not even thinking about what they want to do when they get older, but they understand that mom and dad work. And I said, well, one day you'll have to think about what you want to do for work. How do you want to help people? You have to have some type of goods or services, something that you can trade for money. What is it going to be? So I love having those conversations, even with our little minds. It's so fun.
Hmm. Oh, I love that. And I can see your passion come through for both, for the science and for the flowers, which is beautiful to witness as you're talking about it. How long did you stay working as a science teacher before
So
doing
I
this
was
full
only
time?
a teacher for 3 years. I was trying to make it to that 5 year mark because if you're in Texas teachers, there's a lot of tax breaks and that help with your college loans. So I was really trying to get to that 5 years, but I was getting busier and busier. And I was so young. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I was going to all the networking things. If there
Hmm.
was something on a Monday, I was there. If there was something on a Tuesday, a Thursday. And then I was just shaking hands and meeting everybody. And that's when social media kind of got popular. So I would just put on Facebook, who needs a wedding florist? Who needs help with this? And it would be a referral. It would be a referral from a friend I went to high school with, or a mom of a bride who had did her flowers
Hmm.
recently. And so even without ever paying any marketing or anything, I was just doing these weddings, and it was great. I was able to start to pay off my college loans, pay off my car. It felt great to be a young 20 something year old who had two jobs, who was fully independent financially. I didn't have health insurance from my parents. I paid my own cell phone bill. I had my own apartment. It felt really great and really, really empowering. I love that. Just being able to take care of myself. And I feel like it's kind of been a crutch sometimes as I get older. I realize you can ask for help. It's
Hmm.
okay. I'm learning that the hard way. But I was a teacher for 3 years. And then I got to the point to where I was a disservice to both my brides
Hmm.
and my students, because I'm wearing myself so thin that I couldn't give my full attention and energy to my students, and I couldn't give my full attention and energy to my brides, who their wedding day is their most important day. They need you focused. They need
Hmm.
you to have a full night sleep or full week sleep. I was just running on fumes back then, running on green tea, and I didn't even know I was eating back then. Just whatever I had time to, and just kind of shovel in. And so I made the decision to leave teaching. It was really hard because I had people saying, oh my gosh, you're at the best school in the district. Nobody leaves here. Everybody got a job there, Lupe, and they retired at that school. It was
Hmm.
such a good community, such great parents, such great students. And I remember just going to God and praying and saying, show me the way, because I'm stuck and I don't feel like I can be the best at
Hmm.
both of these things. I have to pick one. And it
Hmm.
was a good time because my principal and my assistant principal, who I still love dearly to this day and still in communication with, they both were leaving. One was retiring and one was starting a family. And so I said, you know what? This is the perfect time. I'll go out with a
Hmm.
bang with them. And so I said it. I early retired from teaching at the ripe age. I think I was 26. But I had so many doors open, and I was so faithful that I listened to those prayers, and I stopped and I just said, how am I going to best use my gifts and talents? And it just felt like at the time I wasn't able to give everything to my students. And that was a disservice to them, because I was on my lunch running to meetings with brides. I was
Hmm.
delivering bridal bouquets and portrait bouquets. Instead of doing planning, I was planning for these weddings. And
Hmm.
so I just don't feel like I was able to give my students what they needed at that time. And I always wanted to own my own business. I had that dream in my mind, owning
Hmm.
that flower day. I come from entrepreneurial women. My great grandmother started a business in 50, and it's still thriving today. So I was never afraid of taking that step to start
That's
my
a
own business.
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. That I literally just wrote down on my notes, entrepreneur. Did you know you wanted to be an entrepreneur? Did you have examples? So that's beautiful. So your grandmother was an entrepreneur. And did you say your mother too?
Yeah, so my family owns a tamale factory in Dallas, and my great grandmother started that business. By the time I was in high school, my mom had left broadcasting because she wanted something that was a little bit more conducive to family. And we were growing kids who needed mom around. And so she franchised off of the family business. And I grew up working in the tamale factory. So I would
Ah,
every day after tennis practice, I would go to school, go to tennis practice, and then I would get a ride up to the tamale shop and I would work. And we did all kinds of fun events and festivals. And I think that's why I love the high intensity, high stress of a wedding day, because I was thrown into that really early. We would close down the streets and have these big Cinco de Mayo parties. And my mom would just say, all right, get the booth ready. And I'd have to get the booth ready and get ready and start selling. And it was fun. It was high stress, but I feel like I could internalize that stress and be really productive. So I can turn those feelings of,
mm,
some people just sit around and say, what do I do? I don't even think, I just do, Lupe.
mm.
I just don't even think. I'm just like, let's go, let's do it. We'll figure it out as we go. So I saw my mom, I saw my grandmother. I always knew, even though I wanted to be this boss to change the world, I also wanted to be a business owner, because I think it is so empowering to be able to do something for yourself, to work for yourself, and to have no restraint on that, right? Nobody's telling you no. You get to
Mm.
decide what you want to do in your business and how you want to help people. And so I wasn't
Mm.
afraid. I remember having a conversation with my dad, and my parents were divorced, but they worked really well to raise me and my brother. And I think that he said, okay. I remember right after college saying, Dad, give me a job, because he worked for a big telecom company. I said, just get me a job if you just work in sales, answering a phone. He goes, no, you're a passionate person. You don't want to just be answering a phone. You need to put your heart and your soul into whatever you're.
Mm.
So he saw it, because I was already making money. I was already, Lupe. I had, in the summertime, I was a nanny, and then I was doing weddings. And so I had matched my salary by that third year being an entrepreneur. And I said, all right, let's go for it. All these doors opened. I remember I had a wedding planner, and she would always call me, because I would say, okay, I'm only going to do one wedding a month while I'm a teacher. Well, slowly it was multiple weddings a month. And I would have a friend call, still a friend today. We started our business long, long ago, 13 years ago. And she would call me and say, hey, do you have your one wedding a month already booked? And I said, yeah. She goes, well, will you take another? I said, for you, I will. So that's how it started. I couldn't say no. And all of
And
these
what was,
opportunities opened, and the doors, it was knocking. I mean, it was just like a knock, knock, knock. Hello.
wow.
It was very, very clear on which direction to take, because I know a lot of people have a fork in the road and they don't know which way to go. I'm a very faithful person. So I have used that faith in my life to really lean into which direction to go. But I know a lot of people have that fork in the road where they don't know where to go, because they're feeling tugged by two different things. And it's hard sometimes, right? Like, they to know, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to change the world? How am I supposed to help other people? How am I supposed to give back? And what's my passion? What's my purpose? I feel like I hear that all the time, because I also coach new florists, women that want to start businesses. They're just unsure. Is this my purpose? Is this my plan? And it can be hard. It can be very overwhelming, especially as a young. I mean, I was 26 having to make that decision. So I started a business when I was 23, and I just did it. I had no fear, and I said, let's go. Let's do it.
Wow. Well, a few things I want to highlight in your story. So you were already in that third year as a teacher. You were already matching your salary, your teacher salary, with the weddings you were doing on the weekends, which is incredible. This is something I would like to highlight in people's stories when they come on the podcast, is that a lot of the time people don't just quit without having tested out an idea. And so you had already fully tested out. You knew you loved it. You had experimented. You'd built relationships. You said you were at networking events, at events every day of the week. So you had already built up a brand. You had already tested out the idea. You knew you loved it. You knew it was calling you. You already matched your salary. So you basically had two full-time jobs.
I did. I had two full-time jobs.
What are your thoughts on that? On doing that before really leaving? Because I think a lot of people dream about things like maybe being a florist or something that they are interested by, but they think maybe I just need to quit my job and do it without kind of having done what you've done.
Well, and I think if you are in a position to where you can quit, I have felt like I've coached several people who they have a savings fund, they have some money from family, or they have a home they're going to sell and downsize. I talked to a lot of women who their kids are grown. They had this
Mm.
whole career, or they were a full-time mom their whole life, and they didn't get to pour anything into something outside their family, which now I'm realizing that being a mom is a full-time job, the most important job I have. But when you hit a point in your life where those people don't need you anymore, it's not a full-time job. What do I do next? And so they may have some funds. They could sell the house and downsize. They may have a retirement that they want to dig into a little bit to start a business. You have to support yourself. And whether you've made some good investments and you can jump right into a business, or you're going to take a business loan out, you have to figure out that financial part first, because that can be really overwhelming, right? I feel like people, it's this like looming cloud of how am I going to pay my bills? I really want to leave my job, but how am I going to do that? I have kids to take care of, and I have a mortgage to pay, and car payments, all the things that we all have. But I was definitely able to make a decision because I was making money. It wasn't just a hobby anymore. I wasn't just helping friends out anymore. I was actually making money. I had learned to charge properly and for my services. And at that point in the teacher, you have seasons, you have summers, you have a school year. So it was a perfect time in that season to leave. I mean, I wasn't leaving in the middle of a job. I wasn't leaving in the middle of the year. I didn't leave anybody hanging. I gave my principals fair warning that they needed to start looking for a new science teacher. And guess what? They were also leaving. So I felt like I had some friends in this, hey, I'm not going at this alone. We're doing this together. And I think that community is so important. If you're not in a place where you have community, if you're not talking about what you want to do with other people, you need to find that group. And I know that I've got mom friends and they're stay-at-home time mom. We don't really have the conversations about business and growing professionally. We talk about our kids and we talk about our husbands and we talk about our lives and how can we survive and thrive in this. But I also have friends who will sit and talk about business ideas for hours. So find those people. It could be a parent. My dad and I, we love to talk business. My mom and I, we love to dream about how we're going to save the planet. So sometimes it's people that are right there in your circle. Sometimes it's friends. Sometimes it's hard because if you are doing big things in your life, people don't always want to hear about it, right? Because if they're not happy where they're at, you're talking about growing and finding something passionate, and they might not be your people either. So sometimes it is getting out in a community and meeting like-minded business owners and just going to a happy hour and talking to a friend that owns a business and say, hey, let's grab some coffee, or hiring a business coach, right? What is the next steps? I want to start a business. What are the next steps? That's kind of what I do with up and coming florists, or even just women who have this idea. The seed's been planted. I've always loved making arrangements. They'll start by, I have got a full day where they can come in and we can go to the flower market and pick flowers, and I'll teach them to make arrangements. And then we'll sit and we'll talk about the business side. I'm like, okay, you can dream and you can make beautiful flowers all day long, but how can you do this to pay the bills? Because this is back-breaking work. And I'm also in a part of my life to where I'm kind of transitioning in my career just because I've had some things happen. There's obstacles that have come along. I've started a family. And guess when weddings are, Lupe? On the weekends, when my kids have soccer and football and cheer, all of these things that I want to be at, but I also want to be there on my bride's wedding day. I don't want to leave her hanging and leave her with my team, who's incredible, but she booked me. I sold her on my services and my talents and what we could do. And then if I'm not there on our wedding day, I just feel like I'm kind of leaving somebody high and dry. I don't like that feeling at all. I think surrounding yourselves with a support system is so important. I don't know how I could have gotten through my life without my friends, my family. And I have got friends, but I love people.
Me too.
And I've got right away, I was like, Luba is my friend. So sweet. And when you've got a support system for family, you got friends who you can have a good time and joke about life with, or go to grab a glass of wine or coffee when you need to talk. We've got to have those people in our life. But if you're a career-minded entrepreneur, you need those people in your life too. You need people to bounce ideas off of and to get excited with. I actually we've closed the doors down, but I had a wedding collective, and we were a collective of wedding planners, wedding photographers, makeup artists, stationery, and florists. So we were one-stop shop, and we shared the same space together so that we could share financially a space, share the finances of it, but also be around other like-minded individuals who were in the same industry, who we could support each other in their hard days, right? an entrepreneur is not always easy. And I talk to so many people who are like, it must be nice to just play with flowers all day long. And I'm like, there's so many other things going. It's not just playing with flowers, but it's nice to be able to have friends that are in business, that are business owners, or doing what you want to do. Maybe you want to make a career change, right? And you're not sure how to do it. Talking with other people who've maybe made that transition is going to help you. So I'm big on community. I'm not just keeping everything internal, but sharing my story, listening to other people's stories, and that's going to help you along the way in your own journey. I think that there's a lot to unravel there, but I think that having a support system who you may be wanting to change careers, and people may say, don't do that. What? Are you crazy? You're here. You've got a great opportunity. You're making good money. You're established at that company, whatever it is, because not everybody is an entrepreneur. My husband is not at all. He says, I like to work for the man. I like to show up and not to worry about all the things in my business, right? Because I am the CEO, I'm the CFO, I'm the COO, all of these things in my small business. And I wear a lot of hats. And he's like, I like my role. This is what I come in. I do this. I clock out every day. And some people are like that. But I can tell that if people are feeling a little lackluster at work, a lot of people who are just not crazy about going to work every day. And I know that you help a lot of people do that. And I like to help people do that too. But I think life's too short to be spending your time. We spend a lot of time working, more time working than with our families sometimes. If you're not loving what you're doing, life is too short to spend your whole life working. I feel like we're born, we work, and then we die. You got to have some things that you love in between there, right, Lupe?
What's standing out to me, Raquel, is your energy. You could come on here and say, oh, it's a lot of work, because I imagine it is a lot of work. It's not just organizing pretty flowers and making pretty bouquets. There's a lot that goes into it. And yet there's this kind of energy, passion, enthusiasm that's exuding from you as you talk, that's coming through this, like, not this tired, oh, I have to do this and then I have to do that, but it's like, I get to do this and I'm excited. And there's resourcefulness, there's dreaming. You said community, the people aspect. There's joy there as you're talking, which is beautiful.
You're probably going to say, how do I keep up with that? Right?
Yeah.
I had some hard struggles. And I feel like the more and more you talk to people, we all have highs and lows, right? Life is mountains. It's valleys. We have the hills and we have the valleys. We have our ebbs and our flows. I recently had an injury, and I think you saw me at the beginning of this year? We met at a floral class. Well, I've done some floral work for you previously, and then you came to my floral class and we got to talk face to face, which was wonderful. That has been a transition in my own life, because there was a point where I said, okay, I miss teaching. I left that part of teaching and honestly didn't think that I would go back. I had so many people, Lupe, that said, well, you can always come back to teaching. And I said, well, that's not really the plan. You don't want to have to go start this new career. But I did. I had a fallback plan if I needed one, right? I think that's important too. I think if you make a switch and it doesn't work out, knowing that you can return. Don't feel like you failed and you can't make mistakes, because we're all just learning how to live. There's no rule book on how to live life, right? But we're trying. We're trying to just figure it out together. So there was a point in my life where I really missed teaching. I was doing really well in my wedding business. And I had a friend who had a studio, and she said, would you be up for teaching a floral class at my studio? And I said, I've never taught a floral class before. I was a professional teacher for children, but I've never taught adults. I said, well, that sounds kind of fun. You know what I did? I called my 10 best friends and I said, come to my house. I'll have food and drinks and flowers, and I'm going to teach y'all a flower class. So I literally practiced on my friends, and we had so much fun. And I went and did that class. That spark, I was starting to feel tired. I was starting to feel run down. We were doing 2, 3, sometimes 4 weddings a weekend, every weekend.
Wow.
We were doing 50 to 60 weddings a year, Lupe.
Wow.
And I did feel like I was kind of getting to a point where I was hitting a wall a little bit. I was tired. I think when you're an artist and you're creative and you're producing so much, you have a downtime. You have to stop and you have to fill yourself back up, because I'm outpouring these. Everything started to look the same. All right. And that's not what I want. I don't want my weddings to ever look the same, because no 2 brides are the same. No 2 couples are the same. Their weddings deserve to be unique and beautiful just as they are. But I was getting run down, and the creativity, I was losing that. Yeah, this is just a job. I am just punch in the clock so that I can
Mm.
get a paycheck, because that's how I felt like, let's just finish this wedding and be done.
Mm.
And then I'd have a couple of days off and we have to do it all over again.
Mm.
I went back to teaching in a different capacity. I started teaching flowers to women and men. I've had a few men in my class who ever want to learn. And that really started filling my cup back up, getting out. And I mean, I've taught probably thousands of women now how to make
Wow.
flower arrangements. And I've owned my business for 13 years now. I've been doing classes for 7. And my husband's always, he's the money guy. He's like, well, how much money are you making from these classes? I was like, I'm making money. Don't worry. It's not as much as weddings. I said, but sometimes it's not about that, Lupe. Sometimes it is about filling your cup up. And yes, I still was able to pay for my supplies. I was still able to pay myself for my time. It was maybe a little less than making weddings, but it was still a good income that I was happy with. And I felt like I kind of got, like I say, Stella found got her groove back. I kind of felt like I found it again, right? And I kind of was getting that passion and that joy back a little bit. In the same industry roles, I was still a florist, but I kind of shifted a little bit from putting everything into weddings and events, which are very consuming, very physically laboring to your body. And I was able to share what I love most, is making arrangements with women and men and whoever. I've done moms and daughters. I've done junior leagues. I've done big corporate events. During COVID, we went from all of these wonderful classes. When I had my studio, I taught a class once a season. So that way everybody could see the beautiful flower every season has to offer. So we did a spring class, a summer class, a fall class, a winter class. And then during COVID, I actually taught a class in my studio a week before the world shut down. On top of, we have weddings and things are going on. But to me, this was a way for me to just fill my cup back up a little bit. And I remember we had that class and it went from, we used to have like cheese boards spread out on the table and everyone could kind of pick and choose their own food, to the host of the class said, well, I think I'm going to make my own little charcuterie, like each individualized. So nobody has to touch the food. I was like, okay, that's a good idea. And then the next week the world closed down. But then I started having people reach out to me and said, do you think we could do a virtual floral class? I said, yeah, the whole world's doing virtual. Let's try it. So we started, because these corporations were getting together, usually during like a monthly happy hour or a quarterly event together, right? Well, when COVID happened, they couldn't gather and they wanted fun things to do. And they still had a budget, like a team budget. So we would go and we would drop flowers off on their team's doorsteps. And then at 6:00, we'd log on like we're doing now on Zoom, and we'd teach a floral class. And it was so fun. And they could cheers and they could say hi to their friends. And then I'd say, all right, well, let's see all of your arrangements, what everybody make. And so I did that for about a year. And then that got really fun because people started reaching out all over the country who weren't even here in town. They had a couple, maybe employees in Dallas area, and then San Francisco, Houston, Georgia. So then we started shipping. I figured out how we could ship flowers, next day ship flowers. And it wasn't perfect. We had a couple vases break a couple of times, but I figured out how to like call a florist, deliver a vase, or Amazon ship them something. So we figured that out, and that was really fun. That was fun because now I could grow my reach even further. I could teach to even more people than just the same people in the same room I was in. I loved that. And then the world opened back up a little bit and started doing weddings and events again. And we started doing in-person classes again. And I had a baby in 2019. So I had a newborn in 2020 when COVID hit, and the whole world stopped. Weddings, events, corporate events, baby showers, all of these things that people normally hire me for stopped. So I found a lot of joy in doing those virtual classes. I was really upset. I'm sure everybody had their own hard times, especially an entrepreneur position, to say, wow, I grew this business and it was doing great. And then all of a sudden, it just stopped.
Everything's,
It didn't decline. It just stopped. There was no events, nothing. And so the teaching virtually, even though there is something for face-to-face, right? When I got to see you in that class and walk around and touch your flowers, that was also to communicate with people who otherwise would have been alone at home. That was a whole different part of teaching that I never even thought about, which has kind of helped me to where I'm going in my next part of my business. But we got back to weddings and got back to classes, and then my babies were growing. They weren't babies anymore and they needed more of me. And I realized, and I had to make a decision, okay, you're going to keep doing these 50, 60 weddings a year and your babies aren't going to have a mom that's home, because we had a full-time nanny. I had somebody helping me cook and clean my house. We were making it work, right? People say, I don't know how you did it all. And I would say, I don't. I have help. I learned this. I finally learned how to take help. But I wanted to be home with my babies.
Mm.
I wanted to take them to school. I wanted to make lunches. I wanted to rock my baby for nap time. I wanted to fold their laundry, little things like that, that when you're so worked up in your business, because that was my first baby. I was able to grow that before I had my own family, before I had a husband. And I put everything into that business. And then I realized I can't put everything into my business and into my family. And so I have learned to take a little step back, and COVID was definitely a stop in my career that was really hard to deal with. And then I had a physical injury, which was another hard stop because I couldn't stand up to do flowers. I couldn't walk to deliver wedding bouquets. When I had this knee injury, I ended up having surgery, and I'm doing much better now, but I'm not who I was before.
Yeah.
And I know I have to listen to myself because now I'm like, Raquel, it's not just you anymore. You brought children into this world who need you and they rely on you. It got to the point they're like, Mom, how's your knees? Can you go on a walk with us? Can you take us to the park? And I was like, no, I can't. I mean, I couldn't help my kid. It was a hard little 6 months of my life, but healing, and you grow through what you go through, or you should, right? Yeah, you grow through what you go through, as I like to say.
Yeah. Well, and then what's interesting about what you're sharing just now is that you've pivoted. So you reached success. So a lot of people, we think about, okay, we follow our passion and then we grow to a point where we're fully booked or we're doing really well. You met that. And then you realize, okay, this is burning me out. Maybe this isn't exactly what I want. And you started teaching, which was pulling in another piece of what you're passionate about. And now you've entered a different stage. There's different factors, your physical health, the ages of your kids, all those things. And you're thinking, okay, maybe I need to shift a little more. You're still doing it within that space, within what you love, but you're being open to that, listening to that, even if it takes a little time, right? Like listening to, hey, my body's telling me.
And that's hard as a florist, somebody who is on their feet 10 to 12 hours a day. I move very fast. I'm a fast paced, always on the go. And then you physically are laid out. My legs got taken out underneath me and I was stuck. And that can be hard for a creative person because you're not creating. And I also couldn't do my other job with my family because I was laid up on the couch for quite a while and having to learn to walk again, learning to crutches, all of these things. But there's a transition and there's healing that goes through that, and a transformation to where I feel like I do have that joy. I lost so much during COVID. I lost so much during my injury, but now I can look back and I can thank God for all my blessings, because I think that without those struggles and those hardships, you don't realize what you have. Sometimes people have so many blessings that they don't even see it. Some of my friends that I just coached, not even for a job, just to be a good friend, I'm like, well, let's make a list. Let's write down what we're grateful for. Let's make a gratitude journal. Because making a list, even through those hard days where I couldn't get off the couch, to open the door for my son, who my friends were so gracious to pick my kids up from school, take them to school, bring us dinner. My family stepped in to help so much. I couldn't even get off the couch to open the door. Like, you're feeling so not productive, unuseful, all of these things. But you learn, okay, I have to stop and I'm in control of my life. I get to decide if I'm going to sit back and say, oh, well, COVID happened and it took a large part of my business. Did we bounce back? We did, but in a different way. My business does not look like it did pre-COVID. And a lot of people's don't. And a lot of people shut their doors to their business. And it's really sad because a lot of dreamers had to stop dreaming. And if you were able to pivot your business during COVID, hats off to you, because it's not easy to have a business. And two, it's not easy to pivot when you're forced to, and it's not something you've been planning. And then sometimes you have health issues, which I never thought. I was 35. I never thought I was going to have a physical injury that took me out at so early in my life, but it did. And I've healed from it and I'm learning from it. And I'm trying to figure out now, how do I continue to share what I have with others, even though it may not be 50 or 60 weddings a year, because I physically can't do that. If I do a wedding, I'm out for a couple of days and I need to be healthy for my kids. I said, okay, I'm going to step back. I'm going to raise my prices so that I can make this jump, raise my prices up a little bit on weddings, which was good. We all had to after COVID anyways. Everything went up in price, including flowers. And so I raised prices up a little bit, changed my business up. We moved which worked out perfectly. But in June 2020, my lease was up in my studio. And I was so sad to say goodbye to my wedding collective because I loved those women. We got married around the same time. We went to each other's weddings. We planned each other's baby showers. We just grew up together in our businesses. But after COVID, there was just no point of having a storefront anymore, having an actual physical brick and mortar. And we had moved, my husband moved, had the great idea to move a little bit out of the city. We were living in Dallas. We moved a little bit to the suburbs. And he said, let's build a flower barn on the property. And I said, oh, what? He said, yeah, a lot of these houses I'm looking at have barns. We could renovate it and turn it into a flower barn. And I said, I like this idea. I'm liking it. So we built a flower barn, and my commute to work is 10 steps out of my back door now. And it's amazing because I can take less weddings. I can drop my kids off and I can walk to work. I don't have to commute anymore. I was spending hours in my car. I feel like it's taken a lot of my soul away. Like by having crying kids in traffic in Dallas, is not fun. And now guess what? I mean, I can put them to bed at night. I can go do flowers and I don't have to drive to the studio. I did have to cut my team a little bit and I hire mostly freelancers. I don't have anybody that's full-time so that I do have the flexibility to say, I'm going to take this month off. We had some things that were on the schedule that we had contracts that we couldn't get out of from when I had my surgery, and they were able to come and do work, and it was great. So I surround myself with hardworking, creative people that when I'm having a hard day and I don't feel like I can do it, they're there to lift me up too. And so I've made some changes, and I'm excited to see where this next chapter of my business is going to go, because I feel like it's going to be more of helping people find their passion in their career, start a floral business. I've done weddings that for so long, and so many weddings that I could do them in my sleep. So now I tell my husband, I'm like, I think it's time to pass the torch. And I will teach other people how to do these weddings like I did. So I'm excited. But like I said, life truly is about just being able to make it through the ebbs and the flows, the highs and the lows, and just being grateful for what you have. Even sometimes I'm grateful for the hardships, because I don't know if without them, if I would be where I am today. I have such a grateful heart that I can look at my family and my life and just say, I'm so grateful for this. But it wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. I had to work hard. There were years where I didn't get a day off. There were years that I missed really important times for people that I loved. Weddings, funerals, baby showers, bachelorette parties. I just stopped getting invited to things because I was never available. I ran myself into the ground and I wasn't available to be there for anybody. So I'm very, very grateful for even just being where I am now in my life, saying, all right, I'm happy with the outcome. And I'm looking forward to what the future is going to bring. I really am.
It almost gave me goosebumps when you said, and I'm grateful for the transformation that happened because of the COVID, the knee injury. There was transformation that happened as a result of that. And I love that. I love the way you just worded that, because there is, if we take the time to reflect, the time to kind of learn from it, even if it's not necessarily right in the moment. And I can imagine as a mom, as someone who has as much energy as you do and who likes to be active and doing things, having to be laying down, not even being able to get up to get the door, that has to have been pretty difficult, pretty hard for you emotionally, not just physically, but emotionally. So I love that you highlighted the transformation that came from that and how you're listening now to those pivots. You knew that flowers were calling you when you were a science teacher. And then you got to a point where you were so successful with it that you'd run yourself into the ground. And so now you listened and changed and started pivoting, and you made some changes that were probably hard to make. You did it. And then you have more options. You have the option to pivot again. And that's not failure. That's growth. What are your thoughts?
When you look at your life, you really don't plan for failures or growths or challenges or obstacles. You really don't. As a young kid, knowing that I had these big dreams for myself and I had these big ambitions. And I remember even sitting down for coffee with a friend one time, and we were planning a wedding together. She was a planner and I was the florist. And she said, why are you working so hard all the time? And I said, I just want to make something of myself. I want my family to be proud. She goes, they are. Look at you. Look at what you've done. Look at all of these beautiful weddings and all these people you've helped. And you were a teacher. You helped all these kids. And now you're teaching women how to make flowers. And I had teachers that I taught come into my flower classes and said, this is our therapy. This helps us get through hard times. Flowers can be a part of somebody's best day, like a wedding day. Be there for baby showers. Like I helped you with the baby shower. funerals. I've done friends' funerals before, which are hard times. But to me, I can bring a little bit of joy and something beautiful on a hard day. It really keeps me going. Honestly, you can't plan a pandemic. I honestly thought I was in a foolproof industry. Everybody gets married at least once, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, Lupe, right? Hey, everybody loves love and everybody will need flowers. But then the world shut down. I had no idea what was going to come, when it was going to open back up. I just had to live in the present moment and stop thinking about, oh, you should have done this. Oh, you shouldn't have made that commitment because now you could have been using that money now. I started thinking about all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. And then you think about the future, you start getting anxious. Honestly, I'm very grateful from what I can remember, anxiety before COVID. But when it hit, oh my gosh, the fear of the unknown of the future, whoo, it took me out some days. I wanted to control it though. I wanted to be in control and I couldn't. And it was a good lesson for me. And I think that there were a lot of silver linings. The more people I talked to, there were a lot of silver linings through COVID, if you found them. A lot of people decide to make lemonade out of lemons. And you're going to be a happier person. Your life is going to be more fulfilled for it. If you can think about the cup being half full instead of half empty. And I know you could be a toxic, positive person. I get that. But you can also be a toxic, negative person too, if you're always seeing the negative of everything. And so I had to learn to just live in the present moment. God was like, you have a beautiful new home I just moved into. I had a beautiful family. I had a baby in my arms. I had a husband that was home. He was traveling so much with work and I worked on weekends and we finally got time to where we were together. And I said, I love this more than anything in the world. This is what I want. I want to be with my family. I want to be with these people that I created, that I love, my husband, that he's my chosen family. Because your business and your career can run you or you can run your business. And so I was at a point before COVID. I think that was probably the biggest silver lining is I was starting to run myself physically into the ground, which I did because a couple of years later I had an injury and my family, they were suffering for my success. And I had to learn, I had to take a step back and say, okay, what is success? And I've had that conversation with multiple friends. What is success? It's different for you and me. For me, it's having stability in my career, but it's also having flexibility in my career that I can be home for my family and I can be there for them. Because I know some of the richest people in the world, they don't know their kids. They're on their 3rd or 4th marriage. Is that success? That doesn't sound like success to me. You have all the money in the world. You can have the biggest company. You can have the biggest endorsements and all of these. For me, I was collecting accolades. I was like, how many magazine covers can I be on? How many big corporations can I get a deal with? All of these things that weren't fulfilling me. I just needed more and more and more and more. And to the point to where I was like, this is not filling my cup up anymore. And when COVID happened and I was home with my family, I realized this is what success is being able to have a career, that you have a career and also still have time to go on date night with your husband. There were months and months and months where we were just passing ships in the night. We never even had a conversation because we were just so busy with life. He was busy with his life. I was busy with mine. We were buying a house. We were having a family. That to me is not success. It's not. So I think sometimes the challenges and the obstacles will force you to sit in the present moment and be grateful for what you have. Because if you're alive, you need to be grateful. You need to be thanking God because it could be the opposite. So I'm grateful for my life and I'm grateful for all the people that have helped me along the way. All those amazing teachers I had, my parents who helped me how to set goals, friends that were with me. I mean, we were friends. We were picking up the phone and calling each other crying after COVID. What are we going to do? And I'm glad I had those friendships. I'm glad that I had trust in somebody that I could be vulnerable with in those times because it could be really lonely. Being successful can be lonely. Being an entrepreneur can be really lonely. You can isolate yourself. And I think that having community, having good friends and good family and my faith have kept me grounded along the journey. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for it all. The highs and the lows, I truly am. It's not for show. It really is. But I think if you don't have those lows, you don't really get to appreciate the highs. I don't know if you feel that way, but I think that as moms, as business owners, people that want to do good in the world, you have to step back and look at it all. The highs, the lows, the successes, the failures. But to me, they're not failures. To me, it is just an opportunity to grow and to transform and to pivot. And I don't know what's going to come in the future, but I'm excited. I'm excited that we're going to launch a YouTube channel and I'm going to be able to help more people build flowers and do things at home. And I want to be a creative outlet for people. And I also want to be a sounding board to bounce ideas off of. Oh, you want to start a business? Great. I'm here. I want to listen. And if my story helps you.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about my own life and thinking, how do I do more of that? I'm thinking, okay, I've built a life and a career where I have flexibility. But as you were talking about what is success, what is real success, that just kind of hit me a little bit. I want to do more of the things that I really value, even though I feel like I do. As you're talking, I'm sure people listening are having the same thoughts, is Raquel, just drop some wisdom. You just shared something so powerful, so deep, so beautiful about one of the things I think about with when I'm coaching clients is like getting clear on what our values are and getting clear on what our inner compass, almost what is it that is really important to us. And then we can take actions from that. That's so important. And so getting really clear on what it is that's most important to us. And so as you're talking, I'm thinking, just even thinking in my own life, what could I do? Reflecting. So I think that's really going to resonate with people. I like to close out every interview by asking if there's someone listening and your message is really resonating, if they want to pivot, what would you say to that person?
I would say to not be afraid. If you're stuck in a place to where you're unhappy, you deserve to be happy. I think that not everybody can live a fairy tale career and start a business and all of these things. But I think somebody looking at my life, they may say, oh, she's got it all, family, a business, all these things. But it took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of nights toward sleepless nights and tired days. But I knew in my heart I wanted to do something different. I didn't think that I was fulfilling myself and sharing what I had to share at just a regular 9 to 5. I learned that really early on. And I did know that I did not want to just sit in an office and just type away. I wanted to actually make some impact in the world. And I think that not to be afraid. And I think people get stuck. It's really easy to get stuck and not feeling creative or not feeling passionate. And try it out, dabble a little bit. I was able to have a teaching career full time, but I also was able to kind of test the waters of my business on the side while I was making income. So I think try that. I think that if there is something that you're interested in doing, take a class at the local community college. Get with the florist. My inbox is full of, hey, I found your Instagram or website and I want to take a flower class with you. I'm thinking about transitioning into a new career. And that's great. I mean, just thinking about it, getting in there, because you may decide, oh my gosh, I have to clean too many buckets and carry boxes of flowers. I can't do that backbreaking work, right? And I've had interns, volunteer, talk with people who are doing what you want to do. Go to coffee and buy lunch for a friend who, if they have time, because sometimes entrepreneurs are busy, but we like to talk, we like to help, we like to share our story. Find somebody who's doing what you want to be doing or who made that transition. I have talked to many friends and family. Off the record, they never paid me. It was just hey, what do you think? And I said, if you're truly unhappy where you're at, you're not doing yourself a service. You're not doing anybody around you service because you're going into that job. Are you happy? Are you showing up on time? Probably not. Are you leaving early? Are you doing the bare minimum work? Probably. Are you putting your joy and your heart into what you're doing? Probably not. If you're doing yourself a disservice to stay in a place where you're unhappy, test the waters like I did. It doesn't hurt. Have a side hustle. Volunteer, take a class, talk to somebody. Don't be afraid at making a change. And I think that financially, I was able to make that transition. Financially, I'm at a point where I can pivot my business a little bit, take less weddings, teach more classes, do more online education is what I really want to focus is being an online educator in Floral, because there are so many people around the world who want to learn and they may not have access in their town. They may not have a florist who teaches classes, because it was like that when I was in high school. I had a florist who did not want to hire me because she said, oh, you want to be a florist one day? I don't want you to take my ideas. And I said, we all are just regurgitating ideas. Nobody has an original thought anymore. It's from somewhere, right? We're just borrowing and copying, and we're with our own life experiences, we're making our own words and our own story. And how I teach is I've taken so many flower classes and I've made so many arrangements. I always say in my class, there is more than one way to design an arrangement. This is how I do it. This is how I learned to do it. These are things I've picked up on. And don't be afraid to just kind of jump out and do it. People kind of get so stuck, and then 40 years later, they're like, well, there goes my life. I didn't really get to do what I wanted to do. I think that volunteering, and I have a passion project with my mom. We have a podcast and just a side Instagram that is just for fun. I think we get to do together that we can both be passionate about. One day, do we hope, we have dreams that maybe it'll make an income? Great. Yeah. But for now, it's a passion project and it's something that really fills us up and fills our cup up. And so do something like that. Have a side hustle. And then maybe, you never know, that Floral was my side hustle. And then it became my career. So I think jumping in, not being afraid, talk about it with people, write it down. I love to write things down, write it in a journal. I love to go back and read my journals from when I was in high school and college. And I look back, I'm like, I'm actually doing some of the things I wanted to do. Or man, I made some mistakes I told myself not to do, but that's part of life, right? It's your own journey. And don't get caught up in the rat race. We live in a big city, right? Where it's really easy to keep up with the Joneses. Very, very easy to look at what other people have and want that. But it's your own journey and your own story. You may never know that that person that has a beautiful house has a failing marriage because they put everything into work, or their kids don't know them. And success is different. So don't judge your journey with somebody else's. It's really easy on social media to get caught up in the envy game, to get caught up in the comparison game. And that's what, for me, I had to step back and say, if I see another florist, another entrepreneur, or even a mom who's taking a huge step back and saying she's a full-time mom, sometimes I get jealous of what other people have, but I have to stop. I have to count my blessings. I have to look at what everything I have, and I have to say, I truly am happy for them. And social media is hard because you don't get to see the full story. You only get to see somebody's highlight reel. You don't know that they're staying up and they haven't had a day off. You don't get to see that they're struggling to pay all of these bills, but they are working so hard to do it. So don't get caught up in comparison. Don't look at your journey and judge what you're doing by what somebody else is doing, because it's your own story. And I think that if you are really interested in really wanting to make a career change, a shift, just do it slowly. You don't have to do it overnight. For me, it took 3 years. I started teaching and I had a side hustle for 3 years. And then I got to where I had to make it able to do that full time. Some people get stuck and they get fearful of failing. If you're thinking you're going to fail, you probably will. And that's okay. You can get up and try again. But don't be afraid. Don't let that failure, that fear of failure, stop you from doing something that you could be really passionate about. You could save somebody's life by sharing your story. You could change somebody's career. You could make somebody's day better. I mean, for me, it's as simple as like flowers. You know, I'm like, oh, it's so silly, but delivering flowers to somebody really does change their day. It really does. And hard moments, that's my thing. When my friends are going through a hard time, I take them flowers. And it's silly and simple, but it really is, could really, really change somebody's day. I don't know. I would say to not be afraid to do it, to start slowly, volunteer, intern, take some classes. I mean, you can learn anything online now. You don't even have to go to a community college like I did. When I was teaching, I was becoming fully certified in wedding florist at a junior college during the week. I don't know how I had time to do that, but I did. And don't compare yourself to others. If you want to be passionate and you want to live a fulfilled life, you're going to have to figure out what it is that you want to do in the first place. What are you passionate about? And I say to anybody that is maybe in a job right now that they don't feel like it's their purpose, but you don't know what your purpose is, sit down and write out, what are my skills? What am I good at doing? What do I like to do? For me, I know I like to be around. I know I like to teach. I know I like to make a space beautiful. That's my thing. If I come to your house and your flowers need to be clipped, what I'm doing, I'm pulling out my rose clippers and I'm clipping your rose bushes. And that's okay. My friends love that about me. Not every friend's like that, but I know these things about me. And how can I use them in a day-to-day situation? How can I make money to provide for my family? How can I help supplement everything that we're doing here? Because when you are a 2-family income, you make the decision. A lot of moms leave working because they want to be home and they don't feel like they were fulfilled in their job. So why go to a 9 to 5? I'm not fulfilled in when I'm leaving a baby at home. I've talked to many moms like that. And I've talked to many moms who are now in a position where their kids are gone and they want to do something. They want to make beautiful flowers. And so I think that making that first step of saying, I want to do it, not being afraid. And I don't think that you should let anybody discourage you either. Because there are the naysayers out there, right? Who will say, don't leave your job. You got a great career. What are you thinking? But I also think that if I'm miserable every day. Is my husband happy? Are my kids happy? Would my friends want to spend time with me? No. Life is just too good to not enjoy it. I think I'm making it sound more simple than it is, but
No, that was great. Thank you so much. How can people follow you? How can people work with you? How can people take one of your classes? Tell me all the things.
so my business is R Love Floral, the letter R, so RLOVE Floral. You can find me. I have a website, and there's multiple ways there that you can take my classes. Right now, I am just getting ready to launch our fall and winter classes. So it just says TBD right now on classes, but sign up for our newsletter because you will get to be in the know of when the classes are coming. We do have a YouTube channel coming. I'm really excited. We've been doing some work for that because then I'll be able to just teach and host
Awesome.
classes and
Awesome.
share
So
a little
exciting.
bit. And Instagram. I love Instagram. I'm pretty active there. So Instagram, Arlo Floral. And I'd love to have you at one of my classes if you're a bride looking for a wedding florist, or if you're just somebody who is thinking about dabbling in floral design. I'm your lady. I'd love to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Lupe. It was such a great conversation.